December 1944, 3rd Army Command Post, Eastern Belgium. General Patton was not looking at a map. He was looking at two pieces of paper. The first was a casualty return from an infantry company that had been hit outside a frozen crossroads. 29 men gone in 3 days. The second was the ration request from the same company. Coffee, cigarettes, canned meat, bread, flour, the same amount as the week before. Patton read the first paper again. Then he read the second one slower. 29 men were dead, but on paper they were still eating breakfast. In a moving war, a mistake like that could happen. A unit lost men on Monday. A clerk worked from an old roster on Tuesday. A truck rolled before the corrected head count caught up. For a day or two, nobody treated extra food as a crime. It became stew in a field kitchen. It disappeared into hungry hands. The war moved on, but Patton did not have one bad page. He had a pattern. 3 companies, 2 supply sections, 5 weeks of returns. Everywhere the dead went up, the ration totals stayed almost perfectly alive. A junior staff captain named Lewis Hale stood near the stove, waiting for orders. Patton did not raise his voice. He pushed the papers across the table. "Tell me what is wrong with these." Hale studied them. "Could be late paperwork, sir." Patton nodded once. "It could be." Then he tapped the column for tobacco. It could also be a man selling cigarettes for ghosts. That was the first time anyone in the room understood the shape of it. Not missing trucks. Not stolen gasoline. Not battlefield scavenging. Someone might be using dead American soldiers as names on a shopping list. Patton gave Hale 4 unit numbers and 1 instruction. No official inspection, no written warning, no questions that sounded like an accusation. "Walk the line," Patton said. "Talk to cooks, talk to drivers, ask about coffee, ask about cigarettes, ask whether they have been short or long, and do not let anyone know what you are really counting." Hale spent 12 days doing exactly that. He moved from depot yards to field kitchens, from supply tents to road junctions blackened by exhaust. He leaned on crates and drank burned coffee with cooks. He asked corporals whether the canned meat had been coming light. He asked truck drivers whether anyone had been skimming from the rear of the convoy. He asked mess sergeants whether the totals felt off. Nothing came back. No one complained of missing food. No one bragged about extra. No one whispered about crates moving sideways. After 12 days, Hale returned with a report so clean it should have ended the matter. Patton read it. Then he asked for the new ration requests. Hale brought them in, and that was where the case changed. The numbers had corrected themselves. Not slowly, not after an audit, not after a written order. In the exact 12-day window when Hale had been asking quiet questions, the suspect companies suddenly reduced their ration requests to match the living head count. Patton stared at those new sheets for a long time. Then he said, very softly, "There he is." Hale did not understand. "There who, sir?" Patton turned the paper around. "An honest clerk fixes an error when you show it to him. A thief fixes it when he hears footsteps." That sentence became the real investigation. Patton did not need to know where the food had gone yet. He knew something more important. Someone had heard a harmless question about coffee and panicked. 3 days later, military police in plain coats began watching the villages behind a forward supply depot near the Belgian border. Not the obvious places. Not taverns full of soldiers. Not markets where black market goods changed hands loudly. They watched small shops, a grocer with half-empty shelves, a butcher with too much cash in the till, a cafe that always looked closed until a local woman knocked twice at the back door. In a village called Marville, they found it. American cigarettes sold one pack at a time. Army coffee wrapped in brown paper with the markings cut away. Canned peaches from a U.S. ration crate sitting behind flour sacks. Not enough to look like a warehouse, just enough to look careful. The items matched the ration categories that had been inflated on the forms. Coffee, tobacco, canned goods. The theft had not been loud. It had been patient. That made Patton angrier. A loud thief steals because he thinks no one can stop him. A patient thief steals because he believes the dead will not testify. The watch list narrowed to 18 men who had spoken to Captain Hale during the quiet inquiry. Officers, supply clerks, mess sergeants, drivers. Patton gave one order: start with anyone living better than his pay. Within a week, one name rose above the rest. First Lieutenant Edwin Lasker, 25 years old, supply liaison, educated, quiet, good handwriting, no disciplinary record. The kind of officer clerks trusted, because he looked like a clerk with rank. But Lasker had recently paid cash for a civilian camera in a town where soldiers were not supposed to be shopping. He had sent money orders home that exceeded his pay. And twice, after dark, he had visited a woman named Lucienne Martel in Marville. Her family had been living under a cloud since the Germans retreated. Her father had worked in the town office during occupation. Some said he only stamped permits because the Germans forced him. Others said he had helped them choose who got arrested. In the winter of liberation, the difference between those two stories could be the difference between survival and a wall. Lucienne was trying to get her parents out before the local tribunal opened its files. Lasker was helping her. That did not explain the stolen rations. But it explained why a man might tell himself the first crate was not really theft. Patton ordered the supply sergeant brought in separately. Staff Sergeant Calvin Dreves arrived before noon. 32 years old. Arkansas. Depot experience. A man with the calm face of someone who had spent the war making paperwork obey him. Patton let him sit. Then he said, "I know the dead names. I know the false totals. I know the village. What I do not know yet is whether you were stupid enough to do it alone." Dreves held out longer than most men would have, almost a minute. Then his hands changed. Not his face. His hands. They stopped lying before his mouth did. He said Lasker had come to him in October. The Martel family needed money for papers, transport, and bribes. Lasker knew the ration returns lagged behind casualty reports. Dreves knew how to widen that lag without making the columns look strange. At first, it was one crate. Coffee and cigarettes. Easy to move, easy to sell, easy to pretend no one had been harmed. Then Dreves realized the system was bigger than Lasker understood. A few dead men on one roster could become a few dozen across several units. A few cartons could become steady cash. A mercy could become a business. Lasker wanted an escape fund. Dreves wanted income. That was the difference between them. It was not enough to save either one. Patton asked when they knew someone was looking. Dreves swallowed. The captain came through asking about coffee. Captain Hale. Yes, sir. And after that? I told Lieutenant Lasker. And then we corrected the requests. Patton leaned back. You corrected them before anyone accused you. Dreves said nothing. You thought that made the page clean. It made it speak. Lasker was brought in an hour later. He did not rage. He did not beg. He did not pretend he had never met Lucien Martel. He confirmed the first arrangement. He admitted the money. He said, Dreves had expanded the numbers after the first week. Then he stopped protecting himself. Patton watched him with the cold patience he usually saved for maps. Did you know the names were dead men? Lasker closed his eyes once. Yes, sir. Did you write any of them? Some. Did you read them? Yes, sir. That was the answer Patton had been waiting for. Not because it proved theft. The ledgers had already proved that. It proved Lasker had crossed the line with his eyes open. There are crimes that hide behind hunger. There are crimes that hide behind fear. There are crimes that hide behind love. But this one had a column of names. And Lasker had read it. The formal charges were dull compared with what had happened. False official requisitions. Misappropriation of government property. Conduct unbecoming an officer. Conspiracy to defraud the Army. The file estimated 93 confirmed dead soldiers had been used in the scheme. The real number may have been higher. The records had been altered at the source, and by January 1945, half the paper trail had been corrected so neatly it looked almost innocent. That was what made the case memorable to the men who investigated it. Not the money, not the cigarettes, not even the French family at the edge of the story. It was the correction. The sudden neatness, the perfect little repair that arrived exactly when fear arrived. At the hearing, Dreves tried to blame the system. He said the Army moved too fast. The rosters were never current. The depots cared more about full trucks than perfect forms. Extra rations passed through the war every day, and nobody asked where every can went. All of that was partly true. It was also useless. A broken gate is not permission to rob the cemetery behind it. Dreves was convicted and sent to confinement. Lasker spoke only once beyond the facts. He asked whether Lucien's family had crossed the border. The officer presiding told him that was not before the court. Patton, who was sitting at the rear of the room for part of the proceeding, gave no answer at all. Maybe the family escaped. Maybe they did not. Maybe the first crate had bought someone one more night of hope. None of that changed the ledgers. Dead soldiers had been turned into supply weight. Their names had been used to pull coffee, cigarettes, and canned fruit out of Army depots. Their absence had been converted into cash. And the thing meant to hide it was the thing that revealed it. Years later, Captain Hale wrote a private account of the investigation. He did not describe Patton as a magician. He did not say the general had a sixth sense. He said Patton noticed negative space. What was missing? What changed too quickly? What stopped the moment it was being watched? Most men saw the corrected ration forms and felt relief. Patton saw a confession with clean margins. Because in war, a dirty page can be a mistake. But a page that becomes clean at the exact moment someone starts asking quiet questions, that is not paperwork. That is fear holding a pen. The clean page was the dirty one.